I hate rainouts.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now for free in the App Store or Google Play. We are back on a Tuesday. The Tigers, however, were not back yesterday night on Monday night. Rain. Really weird storm. Like it was cloudy, but it wasn't supposed to do that, and then it did. So the Tigers do not play a ball game, unfortunately, on Monday night. But we have plenty to discuss. We're going to talk about the American League Central, kind of 1 month in. There's only 30 days in April, right? January, February. I do like the knuckle thing. Did you ever learn that? January, February, March? Anyway, so there's only today rather is the last day of April. And with that, we're going to kind of just take a look at 1 month into the season, where all the teams in the AL Central stand, who I expect to fade, maybe who I like, who I don't like, etc. And we'll just talk a little bit about just kind of the standings of the AL Central as a whole. But then we're going to discuss, I had a very interesting question asked by a listener the other day that was rank the worry level between Colt Keith, Parker Meadows, and Spencer Torkelson. So we're going to kind of do that a little bit in the heart of the show, and then we'll end with a Cardinals preview, talk a little bit about Andy Ibanez's return to the roster, which seems like it's happening as you're listening to this. Gio Urshela, hopefully right around the corner as well. So a lot to discuss still on this off day, which I am appreciative for, considering it wasn't supposed to be an off day. So let's start off by talking about the American League Central. The Tigers look like they will be over 500 for the first time. And like, I'm including the 3 games in March into that as well. I know it's not technically April, but like for the sake of argument, first time they have gone over 500 in the first month of the season since 2016. The AL Central, however, has been very competitive in the month of April, outside of obviously one very notable team, but the Minnesota Twins are coming. They are 8-2 in their last 10, and I am recording this at 8:15 on Monday night, so they are in the middle of their ball game, I believe. They're on a 7-game winning streak, though, heading into this game on Monday night. So if they win, they by the time you're listening to this, you'll know they might be even on an 8-game winning streak. Correa also is coming back from injury on Monday night. He just got activated off the injured list as well. You knew they weren't going to stay down. Knew they weren't as bad as they had started off the season. They're good and they're coming, and they are going to be a player in this division, and very quietly with that, because they're, I believe, 14-13 now. The American League Central has 4 teams over 500. And then they have the White Sox, who are one of the worst teams any of us have ever seen. But like, they have 4 teams over 500. So the reason why I bring this up is that's obviously, that's good. There's not too many team or divisions out there that have, the AL East doesn't have 4 teams over 500. Now the 5th place team in the AL East is 13-16. So but my point is, do you think that the American League Central is this good? Do you think the AL Central is going to have 4 teams over 500 by the end of the year? I certainly don't. So I wanted to just kind of re-talk about our expectations for, and we'll obviously talk Tigers as too, but just kind of go around the horn and just talk about what the other teams are doing in this division. And I think that I'm appreciative for the rainout. I hate rainouts. I wish it wasn't a thing, but I'll take it just because we kind of get an opportunity to do this 1 month into the season type of check-in thing. The Royals, obviously, you just finished a series on them, so we don't have to talk too much, spend too much time on the Royals, but the pitching, as we talked about over the weekend, has been one of the best in baseball out of nowhere. And it's offensively, they're kind of similar to those Royal teams in the mid 2010s that I absolutely despised, by the way. Um, they have the second fewest amount of strikeouts in baseball offensively, which kind of is somewhat of a testament to that. And look, they are clearly much improved from last season. Clearly, right? There is no denying that. They are not going to be nearly as bad as they were last year when they were very quietly. No one talked about how the Royals were like almost as bad as the Oakland A's last year. So they're certainly not going to be that bad, but I still expect them to kind of fall back at some point. I need to see this pitching specifically. I need to see a larger sample size of the pitching. They've had some crazy good first months of the season from some of the players in their starting rotation and even in their bullpen, I guess, too. I'm still kind of waiting for the shoe to drop on the pitching side of things, but this is clearly a much improved team, and they're not going to be like some easy, just rollover victory like they were last season. So that does raise the floor of the division, whether I think they're going to be, an 85 win team or a 75 win team. Both of those are large improved from the 50 whatever they had last season, right? So credit where credit is due there. They've clearly taken a step in the right direction. The Cleveland Guardians have gotten off to one of the hottest starts in all of baseball. They're 19-9. I believe the only team with a better winning percentage in baseball is the Atlanta Braves. They have gotten off to an absolutely fantastic start. And when we talked about the Guardians in the offseason on this show, there's a lot of people, a large majority, I don't want to say majority, I don't want to speak for people, but like there was a large portion of the fan base that was kind of just throwing them to the side. And it was like, oh, the Guardians weren't very good last year. They didn't do anything in the offseason, whatever. And we talked a lot about on here. I expressed my hesitation to just throw them to the side. The Guardians will always have good pitching. And if the hitting can be good enough, they will be good. Now, I didn't expect them to be this good, however. And again, we're less than 30 games in, and that's why we're having this conversation. They're top 6 or 7 by the time you're listening to this. Maybe that's changed slightly. In the entire league in runs scored, they have gotten some very, very, very good performances from quite a few players. Josh Naylor has been one of the best hitters in all of baseball so far this season. But there's a lot of things that I look at, and I expect that to come down to earth a little bit. I don't expect them to be as bad as they were last year. That was something I even before we started playing games, I kind of held firm on in the offseason. Like the Guardians are going to be decent. But this is like they are second to last in baseball as a team in barrel percentage, hard hit rate. They're third to last in exit velocity, right? And they're toward the bottom of the lead in expected slugging percentage. Now they play the games for a reason and they're doing well. And expected stats, some people don't like them because like the results are the results. And I understand that. But this early in the season, it's really hard for me to look at those and look at all of, there's just a lot of numbers that point to their offense maybe being somewhat similar to what we're used to. But that all being said, I still think it's a lot better what a lot of people thought they were going to be going into the season. So Cleveland is going to be a player in this division as well. And then you have the White Sox, who just swept the Tampa Bay Rays. Are they not awful? No, they are. They're dreadful. This is an awful baseball team. They're going to be even worse after the trade deadline. Don't lose to them very often, please. That's not a good team. Okay, so let's talk a little bit Tigers, and then we will get into the worry level of 3 players on this roster, and then we'll preview the series, obviously, at the end of the show. We'll do all of that right after this. Going to talk to you today about our friends over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and obviously baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully recapping 2 baseball games against the St. Louis Cardinals that we will preview here at the end of the show. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the free 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, or for free in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So, talking about the American League Central, I want to end with just a couple of fun stats for the Tigers. And by fun, I mean anything but. They are actually somewhat infuriating to me. The Tigers are 16-12. They find themselves third in the AL Central. And I don't mean to do this segment to standings watch in April. I think that that's ridiculous. Just focus on the games ahead of you. Focus on yourself. I'm not really worried about other teams right now. Won't be for months still. But I think when talking about the Tigers and the 16-12 start, the pitching has been fantastic and the offense has been not even close to fantastic. And so there's this constant just either glass half full or glass half empty conversation that's either, wow, well, when the bats do heat up, look out, the Tigers may be really good. And then there's the pessimistic view, which is the bats are just bad and they're going to be bad. And the pitching is going to have to do all the heavy lifting if they expect to do anything this season. Some offensive stats for you. The Tigers have the 4th worst, at the time of this recording, obviously, the Tigers have the 4th worst on-base percentage in baseball, in all of baseball. Not great, right? 4th lowest OBP, not where you want to be. On top of that, they are second to last in baseball in zone swing percentage. Just straight up the amount of times their hitters swing at pitches inside the strike zone. Not doing damage, not quantifying it at all. Just straight up how many times you swing. They're second to last in that category. They're third to last in just swing percentage, period. Just straight up how often you're swinging the bat. And the most infuriating, they have the lowest first pitch swing percentage in all of baseball. And it's not like, they're 0.2% behind second to last. They are last by almost, not quite, but almost a full percent higher, lower, whatever you want to say, than the team that's next closest to. So they never swing at the first pitch. And look, that it would be one thing if they weren't swinging the bat ever and they weren't swinging at pitches in the zone, but they were walking, more than like anybody. And their on-base percentage as a team was like ridiculously high. Right? No, their OBP is in the gutter with this approach of just like take the first pitch always. And like, they're not even an elite chase rate team. Like, it's not like they're, we don't swing very often, but we don't chase ever. Like, no, they're relatively middle of the pack. It's very frustrating to me. And I think that is not entirely because the players are the ones in the batter's box, but a lot of that has to be addressed by the coaching hitting staff, right? The hitting coaches this has to be like noted. There's no way this is just like flown under the radar. It's baffling to me. Those numbers all next to each other should not exist. You should not be a no swing, no OBP, no first pitch swing team that doesn't get on base somehow. Like that shouldn't be a thing. Your approach is clearly flawed. Clearly. I mean clearly. So the pitching has been phenomenal, right? And that's great. All of there's a ton of analytics to support. We could just rave about that for half an hour. The pitching side of things has been really, really solid. But the offense needs to take a step in the right direction, or else they are going to be one of the teams that fades later in the year, right? So that's not news to anybody. Everybody's pretty well aware of those facts. So speaking of that, and speaking of some offense that would certainly help the Detroit Tigers this season, I got asked a question by a listener the other day that was asking me to rank the worry level of Parker Meadows, Colt Keith, and Spencer Torkelson, right? So I want to do that exercise here today really quickly in the middle of the show. We're going to start off with number 3, the person that I am quote unquote least worried about. That would be Colt Keith. And look, I want to start off by saying it is impossible not to be, I think, somewhat concerned, at least have a little bit of a conversation with yourself in your own head or with whatever, with who, I guess, with your friends. Like, I don't, whoever you have conversations with about baseball, it's impossible not to bring up some level of concern, is my point. And um, so I want to start off by saying that. But Colt Keith, the reason why he's at number 3 for me is, as we've talked about a lot so far in this first month of the season, is that he is a notorious slow starter after promotion. And that's, as I continue to be annoying about, would have really liked to see him in September call-ups of last year. That's not forgotten to me, and that's one of the reasons why. But regardless, he isn't striking out a boatload. He's actually striking out not very often at all. He's in the top third in the league in strikeout rate. He isn't chasing a lot either. He's better than league average in chase rate. He's putting the ball in play a decent amount. Actually, he just isn't squaring anything up at all. He's not hitting the ball hard whatsoever. And to me, a lot of that is still just timing. And certainly there's some mechanical stuff that I'm sure he's tweaking and working with to try to get his timing down. But I think that when he does get his timing down, he will see a huge uptick in production. And that's not to say that, you know, if he still has an OPS in the 400s by the middle or end of May, that he's not going to get sent down or anything. Like, decision is going to have to be made on some of these guys relatively soon. But again, I'm not saying that it's smooth sailing. He's struggled this year mightily. But when ranking these 3 specifically, those are the reasons why he's at number 3 for me. Number 2 is going to be Parker Meadows. He has legitimately been one of the worst hitters in baseball this season. A lot of justified, I think, excitement around him going into the year, myself included, obviously. We were really hype about his potential for the 2024 season, but his offense was really never a guarantee. And so far, we obviously have not seen that. He has 2 pretty large holes in his swing. He's been struggling a lot with fastballs up and away. It's almost an automatic swing and miss, genuinely. Like, the numbers on that pitch are not good, right? Like, he is swinging and missing or just taking them. It's a very large strike percentage on balls that are in that up and away quadrant, or not quadrant. If you break the strike zone into 9 boxes, rather, that up and away box, he has really struggled with so far. And then also just low strikes. And the one low strikes, kind of like heart of the plate low strikes, he's actually been kind of turning on stuff inside, popping out a lot, etc. He's got a K rate of almost 40%. He really hasn't been too great at a whole lot. But I think the one silver lining early on, like really early on, was, he's walking a boatload. And that's great. But that wears off when pitchers realize that there is no reason to expand the zone really whatsoever with him. As long as you just pound the strike zone, again, he's striking out 40% of the time almost, right? Like, that's so he's seeing a lot less. His walk rate has gone down gradually over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, because he's just seeing more strikes because pitchers aren't afraid of him. So big picture versus short term, I think are different things with Parker. Like, short term, obviously he's struggling mightily. I still think a trip to Toledo is kind of looming if he doesn't pick it up before Gio Urshela returns. But he's still pretty young. He made a lot of adjustments last year when he saw the big uptick in production at the minor league level. Just more power, ability to hit lefties was a big thing last year as well. So short term, yes, obviously has been struggling. Big picture, I still have faith that he can provide a lot of value to this team. But he needs to hit even remotely decently, obviously, for that to be worth it. If he can be even a 10% below league average hitter with some occasional power, right? Run into some homers. He will be uber valuable. But a 90 OPS plus, WRC plus, whatever, stat you want to use, is currently like the moon to him right now based on his production so far. So even that, 10%, 15% below league average, whatever you want to say is the bar for him. He's not even obviously even close to that. So still some hope big picture. But I think that this is just a really brutal adjustment for him at the major league level. And we'll keep an eye on him over the next, it looks like, week or so. He will still be here at a minimum. Let's get into Spencer Torkelson, who obviously, I don't think a surprise to too many people, is the number one player on this list. We will do all of that right after this. Going to talk to y'all today about our friends over at DoorDash. This Mother's Day, get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day just that much better. You can pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. Is she a bookworm? Well, you can try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Well, you can get a gift card for her favorite coffee shop. You truly can't go wrong. So get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off of your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery store, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB, all one word. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. All right, everybody, welcome back. Your third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always, making us your first listen every day. Ranking the worry level, if you will, between Colt Keith, Parker Meadows, and Spencer Torkelson. I think Torkelson's pretty easily the slam dunk number one here. He really just isn't doing a whole lot of anything. And when I say, someone looks lost at the plate, this is it. Like, this is what looking lost at the plate truly looks like. The only redeeming quality he has really had at the plate so far has been he is not chasing out of the zone. But I also, like, he's not doing anything with balls over the heart of the plate, so I don't care. Like, he's not even really swinging at balls over the heart of the plate lately, right? The last week or so, he's been taking pitches right down the middle. He's been getting cookies first pitch and just takes everything. So I don't really care that his chase rate is good. Like, that doesn't really matter to me because clearly his decision making is on which pitches to swing at and which not to is not correct lately. It's not in a good place. And the defense has been really brutal to go along with it, which has been a thing his entire major league career. And that certainly isn't helping anything. His expected stats are actually worse than his already poor stats on the season. Like, his expected whatever, batting average, slug, whatever, they're actually lower than his actual numbers. And this list, obviously, unfairly maybe, but it takes into account expectations. And Torkelson, not only because of like the prospect pedigree and the 1-1 and everything, he whatever. The reason that they're high is because Parker Meadows played like okay baseball, okay offense, below league average offense for a month last year. Colt Keith is a rookie. Spencer Torkelson hit 30 homers and had 94 RBIs last season and had an OPS well over 800 in the second half of last season. His expectations are high and higher than anybody else that we've talked about today, certainly, right? They were going into the season were higher than really anybody outside of maybe a few players, Riley Green and maybe some Kerry Carpenter, maybe, because he did well last year, right? It's not just like made up or like, oh, well, like why are you expecting that? Like he did really well in half a season last year. And he absolutely just has not, obviously, been even close to that so far this season. And now we're looking around. This is year 3 for him, and he has one half a season of good hitting. Now, we are a month into year 3. It's not like he has 3 full seasons under his belt. He has 2 seasons and then a month. But It's frustrating, and I'm sure it is for him too. I'm more so than anybody probably. Um, we know he's not going to be, and some I know I'm going to see some. Oh, are you sure? Like whatever, but he's not going to be a 578 OPS. Bad his entire career. We saw again last year with our own eyes. We saw 30 homers, 90 plus RBIs, and an OPS over 800 from the All-Star break on. It's just a matter of what ceiling he actually does have. So yes, I'm worried about the short term because he's struggling mightily and just looks like he has zero game plan when he's in the batter's box right now. But I really, obviously, I've said obviously like 62 times. I'm really sorry. But I hope it clicks soon, right? I hope the timing is just back one day. To summarize this conversation and to move on here, we have a whole lot of baseball left this season. We'll see what kind of adjustments he makes and what kind of improvements, hopefully, he makes throughout the year. But after this season, his ability to be the heart of the lineup threat that this organization thought he was going to be is going to be a huge topic of conversation after this season. And I know that it's already becoming one now because of the slow start. But there's still a lot of baseball left to be played, and we saw how much better he was throughout the season and the adjustments that he made last year. So there's no like final conclusion to the Spencer Torkelson story, right? 2 years and 1 month in to his Major League Baseball career. But short term, really want to see this turned around, right? Not a surprise to hear me say that. But after this season, that's maybe not even just throughout this season. That's going to be a big topic of conversation. So we hope that the timing can get fixed and that some adjustments can be made because clearly, again, we're not imagining up some player we've like never seen before. We saw improvements and a pretty solid hitter last year, just less than a year ago. So we know it's in there. It's just again, it's just really a matter of the potential ceiling and how well he will be able to recover going ahead this season. But I think it's pretty much impossible to not have him at the top of the worry list so far this year. It's been a rough one. Andy Ibanez is officially back. I guess I shouldn't say officially because the game got rained out, but Andy Ibanez is back. I guess unofficially, Buddy Kennedy's locker has been removed, so he seems to be the corresponding move to that. It's not a huge shocker. I think there was, again, kind of an outside chance it might have been Parker Meadows just because Winfield Perez and Matt Vierling can both play center field. But I think Buddy Kennedy, at the end of the day, makes sense. I'm sure he will be back at some point. And he looks pretty solid. So good on Buddy Kennedy. Again, kind of, proving that the depth in this organization hopefully has taken, some strides, as little as it may be. But he was fine in his stint here. And not really surprised that he was the choice there. Gio Urshela, not looming, not like right around the corner, but and I'm not in that room. I'm certainly not a doctor. I don't know how close or far he is, but they are talking about him potentially like resuming activities relatively soon and whatnot. So if that is to be true, then the next big conversation we have is who leaves when he comes back, right? Because then you're going to have, right, the Winfield Perez conversation. I don't think you can do that. Now, if it's 2 weeks from now and Perez goes on an 0 for 25 skid, then like certainly he's going to be thrown back into that conversation. But with how he's hitting right now, certainly not. He's been your 3 hitter the last 2 games. Parker Meadows is, again, obviously going to be in there. Zach McKinstry, no options, can play shortstop. We've talked about that a lot. Maybe an outside chance. And then obviously Colt Keith as well. I don't think it's going to be Torkelson for as much as this fan base is going to continue to say it on social media. But yeah, I think there's a real chance it might be Parker, depending on, how Parker and Perez and McKinstry and Keith and whatnot do from now until Urshela comes back. So something to keep an eye out for there as well. We'll end with a St. Louis Cardinals preview. The Cardinals are currently 13-15, which is last place in the NL Central, had a really rough season last year, have not gotten very good production from Paul Goldschmidt this season, got off to a really rough start. Arenado's swing has been in question. They have and the biggest thing is their pitching has just been absolutely brutal. We'll talk about that now. Easy transition there. These three games, we have a doubleheader today. If you're listening on Tuesday, Jack Flaherty against Kyle Gibson was a 4.35 ERA. Then Steven Matz with his 5.55 ERA against TBD for the Tigers. Does anyone think it's not going to be Matt Manning? I think it probably is. And then game 3 on Wednesday, Miles Mikolas versus Kenta Maeda. Miles Mikolas with a 5.91 ERA. None of these pitchers have been very good this year, and none of them strike out people. Kyle Gibson, obviously we are very familiar with from his days with the Twins, has been a low strikeout pitch to contact guy for a little bit now. He's 36 years old, I want to say. And 4.35 ERA, comfortably the best by over a run of the three pitchers you're going to face this series. Steven Matz doesn't strike anybody out and has an ERA over 5.5. Miles Mikolas doesn't strike that many people out, not as low as Steven Matz and Kyle Gibson, but and has an ERA of almost 6. If there is a series you would point to and go, wow, I really hope the offense maybe wakes up this series, it's probably against the St. Louis Cardinals. Let's go score some runs. Eh? Why not? Why not us, as the Boston Red Sox once said? Why not? Why not actually score some runs? Flaherty looking for a decent start there. Obviously, Matt Manning, very fascinating every time he pitches for the Tigers, and then looking for back-to-back good starts from Kenta Maeda. We'll talk about that game a little bit more at the end of tomorrow's show, but also we're recapping 2 games, so maybe not as much. That's what we're talking about it today. All right. Look, you got a chance to take 4 straight series here to end April. And that's awesome. That's really, really cool. So let's do it. Why not? I'm kind of, I don't really ever expect to win 2 games of a doubleheader. That's it's very, very difficult to do. But if you can split the doubleheader and then take the finale on Wednesday, I'm going to be a pretty happy camper going into the month of May. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow recapping both games of this double header. I appreciate you all greatly for continuing to tune in, even on a rainout day. All right. Love you all to death. We will be back tomorrow. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.